Welcome to Flashback, a recap of stories amid headlines during the week. We begin on Monday when the Presidential Election Petitions Court dismissed the application by the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar for the live transmission of the court proceedings. In a unanimous ruling, the court held that not televising the proceedings would not in any way amount to lack of fair hearing on the part of the petitioner. The counsel to the PDP and its candidate had argued that the live broadcast of the proceedings would remove any doubts about the transparency of the judiciary and promote fairness. But in the ruling read by the chairman of the panel, Justice Haruna Samani, the court held that the order sought by the petitioner is outside the scope of the petition. The five-member panel held that Nigeria's judicial policies and legislative framework had no place for live telecast of court sessions and therefore refused to grant the prayer. And President Muhammadu Buhari on Monday inaugurated Dangote Oil Refinery in Ibeju-Lekki area of Lagos. The event was attended by presidents of some African countries and dignitaries. The product of the refinery, which is arguably Africa's biggest oil refinery and the world's biggest single-train facility, is expected to hit the market by the end of July this year. The plant covered a land area of more than 2,600 hectares with the capacity to process 650,000 barrels per day, and it will be churning out premium motor spirit, diesel, aviation jet fuel, dual-purpose kerosene, among other refined products. And still in the week under review, the United States President Joe Biden on Tuesday announced the country's 9-man delegation to attend Nigeria's presidential inauguration on Monday, May the 29th. According to a statement on the White House website, U.S. Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fuge, would lead the delegation. And other members of the delegation were U.S. Embassy Charge d'Affaires in Abuja, David Green, Sydney Kamalaga Dove, and Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade, Marisa Lago, Commander U.S. Africa Command, Michael Langley, and Director of U.S. Trade and Development Agency. And still on Tuesday, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair expressed his readiness to support the incoming administration. Mr. Blair made a commitment when he visited the president-elect at the Defense House in Abuja, and he promised that his institute, Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, would be a willing partner of the incoming administration, especially in prioritizing its goals and delivery. And still on Tuesday, President Muhammadu Buhari virtually inaugurated the second Niger bridge, and the project was named after the outgoing president. They also inaugurated the Loko Oweto Bridge in Nasarawa State and Benue, Ikom Bridge in Cross River State, Kaduna-Kano Road, federal secretariats in Zamfara, Anambra and Bayelsa State. Anambra State Governor Chukwuma Soludo and his Imo State counterpart, Hope Uzodinma, were grateful for the realization of the project.
These are only symbols of our efforts and commitment to upgrade, renew, and expand Nigeria's stock of infrastructure. We do not act on infrastructure by accident. It has been a deliberate choice for our government as a tool to fight poverty, to create economic growth and employment, and to open the path of prosperity for our people. As we look at the debt profile, I urge us to also look at the assets and investment profiles, some of which was paid for by debt and some by investment income. In 8 years, I am proud to say that we have doubled Nigeria's stock of infrastructure to GDP from about 20% to over 40%, and that is no small undertaking.
And on Wednesday, President Muhammadu Buhari presided over his administration's last Executive Council meeting ahead of his final transfer of power to the President-elect Bola Tinubu. The President appreciated members of his cabinet for their loyalty, patriotism and selfless service to the country.
Good morning, sir.
Members of the Federal Executive Council arriving for their valedictory FEC meeting. Just like their first, this last one is very important. President Muhammadu Buhari, who is the chairman of the Federal Executive Council, thanked his ministers for their steadfastness in pursuing the goals of his administration and urged them to support the incoming administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, even from outside government.
I am proud to say we gave governance our best and have bequeathed a solid legacy which the Nigeria we have all prayed for.
It was not generally a smooth sail for an administration that was hit with high tides and navigated through stormy clouds. For most part of it, the tough times did not last, and lieutenants of President Buhari were challenged at every step of the way. From the COVID-19 pandemic to heightened insecurity across the country and 2 successive economic recessions, the scars the administration carries are plenty. But the valedictory FEC meeting was a time to also reflect.
By the time we were exiting the recession and thinking about bouncing back economically and making advances in the security angle.
He allows you to do your work without interference, and he supports you. He gives you all of the powers that you need to exercise the privilege that he has given you.
President Muhammadu Buhari has been able to clearly show and beamed his searchlight to not only the minority people, the competent minority people across the country.
The president did not dissolve the cabinet as many had expected. Instead, he directed the ministers to return to their duty posts and continue to work until the curtain falls on the life of his administration.
Let's flash your mind back to Thursday, where President Muhammadu Buhari conferred the nation's highest honor of the Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on the President-elect Bola Tinubu. The President also conferred the Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger on the Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima. At the investiture in Abuja, the President, Muhammadu Buhari, restated his confidence in Bola Tinubu's capacity to chart a new course for the country's development.
President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu arrives at his investiture of the Grand Commander of the Federal Republic. This is the first time an outgoing president will bestow the country's highest honor on an incoming president of the Federal Republic. President Muhammadu Buhari will certainly take most of the credit for this smooth civilian-to-civilian transition. As he bows out on the 29th of May, he is confident that Nigeria will be in safe hands and under competent leadership.
It is my earnest desire that you will find these documents useful, as this would be the first time in the history of this country that such a detailed documentation will be produced for handover to a new administration.
The president-elect was handed the transition document, which is a policy status update of the outgoing administration, a foundation upon which the new administration will begin. Bola Ahmed Tinubu says he understands the magnitude of the task ahead and he is ready and willing to take it on.
Renewed in hope and dedication to our national greatness, I also feel full of pride that this moment is our moment. This stately occasion is proof that Nigeria is vibrant and true democracy.
The Nigerian story under President Muhammadu Buhari has been a bumpy ride on the national journey to economic stability, security, and building infrastructure for sustainable development. As President-elect Bola Tinubu moves to take center stage in governance, he already has a clear picture of the current state of the nation. Nigerians hope they will not have to wait for too long before the impact of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration is felt.
And on Friday, the Supreme Court dismissed a suit filed by the People's Democratic Party to challenge the alleged double nomination of the Vice President-elect, Kashim Shettima. The Apex Court agreed with the lower courts that the PDP lacks the local standard to institute such case.
The People's Democratic Party contended that the manner the APC and Asiwaju Tinubu nominated Mr. Shettima as vice presidential candidate for the election was in gross breach of the provisions of the Electoral Act. The party had argued that there were evidence to establish that Mr. Shettima was nominated twice, both for the vice presidential position as well as for the Borno Central senatorial seats, an action the PDP maintained was in contravention of the law. Delivering judgment, the Apex Court held that the issue of locus is important. A plaintiff's locus is linked with the court's jurisdiction. A plaintiff must show harm or substantial harm done to him by the action he is complaining about. The appellant relied greatly on Section 245, subsection 14c of the Constitution. This section deprived the appellants of the locus as it bars interference of political parties into the affairs of other political parties. There are exhibits before the court that the fourth respondent withdrew his nomination or candidature for the Senate before accepting the nomination for the Vice President. The fourth respondent did the needful before accepting the nomination of the Vice President in line with Section 31 of the Electoral Act. The determination of pre-election matter has time limits, the 18 days for the trial court to exercise its jurisdiction and the 16 days for the appellate court to exercise its jurisdiction has lapsed.
Irrespective of the unlawfulness of what APC did, we are not members of APC and we cannot challenge it. Well, this is the Supreme Court. We can't, like I told them in court, we can't appeal to God. We will stop here. We are bound by their judgments.
The Supreme Court has spoken and spoken very, very loudly. And I think the significance of it is not so much for the judgment, which we ordinarily expected.
And finally, in the week under review, the Federal High Court in Abuja imposed a fine of 17 million naira on 3 litigants and their lawyer for filing a frivolous suit to stop the inauguration of the President-elect Bola Tinubu. Justice James Omotosho imposed the fine on Praise Ilemona, Paul Awudu and Anongu Moses, who jointly sought an order to hold the May 29th presidential inauguration. According to the judgments, the 3 litigants were to jointly pay the president-elect a sum of 10 million naira and another 5 million naira to the All Progressives Congress. The counsel to the plaintiffs, Daniel Eloma, who filed the suit declared as vexatious by the court, was ordered to pay 1 million naira to Bola Tinubu and the APC, while the judge held that the plaintiffs lacked the local standard to file the suit, adding that the court couldn't exercise jurisdiction to hear it because it related to a presidential election.